be this notion that to compete against you is a good thing because it brings the best out in me. And I think if we pull out those students, we can say we have the government high school, and you have a mathematics, science, and information technology component of that school. You have an arts and humanities component in that, because and also outside of that, you cannot forget that there are some very talented people, Bahamians, who are not necessarily academically inclined, but very, very, very good with their hands. And I mean, look at the work that we see here in Mr. Roberts' art studio. I mean, I may not have been the best calculus student. Mr. Roberts may not have been the best calculus student, but to see that his talents are capable of producing this quality and level of work, I mean, he has opened himself up to the world. He can sell these things and get such a pretty reward for it. And so I think we have to all recognize we have varied talents, we have very gifted people, but we have to nurture those talents to identify what those are. And so some persons suggest that, well, at grade 7 level, you identify certain areas that one might start to funnel students in. And so you have persons who would be more, academically inclined. You put them in certain streams. And then by the grade 9 level, those who qualify would go to the government high school, and others would go to a more focused technical and vocational institute. BTVI shouldn't just be for those who've graduated. But I think we're getting there, but at the end of the day, we have to have a merit-based system.
Thank you. Phil, Tony, I hear what they're saying. Obviously, that's going to take money. But what about this? Is there a different way to structure the delivery of general educational instruction to our population that is more relevant to today's working world, where you can show people, parents and the child, here's how this will equal survival in this community because here's the connection, here's what they're learning, here's what's needed. A system, for example, that takes into account the archipelagic nature of our nation. In other words, should we decentralize the administration of formal education in the Bahamas?
Over time.
Over time.
Yeah. Transition. That's a loaded question again, I think our single most important national issue is the educational question, without a doubt. It transcends any other thing that we can talk about when we start talking about the future. There has to be greater linkages between what we see ourselves to be as a country and how we are teaching ourselves to get to that particular point. I mean, we've talked forever about the fact that tourism and financial services are our number 1 and 2 industries, but where is that represented within the educational system? Okay. What is the curriculum that reflects the reality of our economy? Should we not then be focusing more on the basics, the reading and the writing and the arithmetic and technology as the fundamental things that are taught within the school system?
To what end, though? I mean, you see what I'm saying? You say link. You're pushing those to connect with just having a good education, or a good education that will serve this country?
A good education that will serve this country, and it goes back to the original question we spoke about, this national development plan. You know, if you have this wonderful picture that comes about at the end of the day of a 2 to 3 year dialogue, conversation about what we want this country to look like, and we come up with a scenario that most people agree with, then we understand that we are working towards that after we institutionalize it, because it cannot change every 5 years, right? And once we begin to do that, then we are better aligned to come up with the system that will get us where we want to go, where we can see ourselves being.
Okay.
The decentralization, well, I'm a product, if you will, of decentralization, I believe. I went to school in Crooked Island, primary and high, right? So from that perspective, I think decentralization is probably needed. But I think some of the things that we can do, again, fairly quickly, right? We lose hundreds, thousands of hours of productive time because of the 8:30 or 9 to 3 p.m. school. We need to extend that from 3 to 5. So when the parent leave at 4:30 or 5, you know, the kids are not doing things that they should not be doing. Their homeworks are done. If, as Dr. Rollins indicated, you know, some people have better, they're better at their hands or academically inclined from 3 to 5, they can go into this train or this facility that they focus on those particular skill sets, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, again, but back to Phil, if we don't know where we are going, you know, how can we determine how many nurses we need, how many doctors we need, how many mechanics we need, how many lawyers, accountants, right? We don't. For instance, right, back to I agree that we should probably get the old, if you will, government high. Some of the Caribbean islands, like Barbados, for instance, education is very competitive and a big thing, right? But, you know, a lot of parents today can't afford to send their kids, right? But, you know, if I have this national plan that says in 5 years we need 1,500 nurses, we only have 500. You know something? I believe if you were running your business, you know, I need X amount of products, you would put the resources to achieve that. So, for instance, you may have kids who can't afford to pay for it, right, but we know that they want to study nursing. We have a demand for it, so the government fund the entire thing, right? Again, because of a lack of a plan, we just continue to fumble the ball. But back to, I mean, the basic. I think we should immediately, beginning next year, September, as a matter of fact, January, extend the school hours to 5 o'clock.
And again, this isn't too much. We're not
too
asking
much.
too
Not
much
at
of
all.
our
Not
kids.
at all. Not
They're
at
not
all.
going to fall over because
Not
of
at all,
this.
not at all. And you know something? The parents would love you for it.
The teachers union president.
Anastasia, please.
I think Tony makes some good points. I think sometimes he gets a little bit radical with it and his realities, but
Sometimes
certainly
that's the only way to get things
okay.
done.
He certainly is not asking too much. But you know, as I've just been out of high school for about 3 years now, and so certainly I know children or young people that hear this would cringe and their seats to think that they need to stay in school from 8:30 to 5. But as a young person, I must say that I can sort of agree with it. And it seems as if we can adjust the system so that our kids are involved in something between the hours of 3 and 5, or even throughout the day, that is about building that creativity that I was talking about, that is about building that national identity, that national pride that I was talking about, then that could work. And we're able to see a lot of benefits from that. But even just earlier, touching on the point that my colleague here made, when we talk about beginning to show when our kids are gifted in certain areas, I think things like